Hello and welcome back to Just Another Football Podcast. Back again. I'm back in the host chair with, well, for good reason, because although Ali is here, he's currently at the wheel, quite literally, not like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's at the wheel, podcasting, commitment personified. So no video from Ali today, but he is here. George is also here. Guys, how are you getting on?
Yeah, well.
Yes, this is the. If you're wondering who's on the profile picture, it is Brendan Aronson. If you are,
It's not going to be popular with some.
Yeah, it's not going to be popular, but don't at me.
Yeah. Well, listen, it makes a nice contrast to having you pop up occasionally, Ali. Now, we must apologise if there's any sort of talking over one another, because obviously we can't see Ali at the moment, so we'll do our best, but it's hard enough to keep him in check as it is, let alone when we can't see what he's going to pipe in with at any point. So, mate, no apologies for that. But busy weekend of action, lots has happened, and straight back into the action from tomorrow, midweek Premier League action. So we'll look ahead to that a bit later in the episode. But given what went on the weekend, I think it's only right we look over some of the weekend's action briefly. I'll save the Schadenfreude at the expense of Tottenham Hotspur for a bit later on. So we'll
save the best to last, Harry. Save the best.
The thing is, mate, we might be talking about Man City Arsenal lost, and I can't necessarily say that's the best thing. But we'll come to Spurs in a bit. I think it would be remiss of us not to acknowledge the fact that there were a couple of FA Cup semi-finals this weekend. Not the best spectacles, in truth. I mean, one was very one-sided, and one was a kind of nervy, cagey affair. But it's resulted in a Manchester Derby FA Cup final, and you know the way things are looking at the moment with Man City, they could be playing for the treble by that point. So storylines coming out your ears, whichever way you slice it up. I think the one I would start with, and not necessarily because it's the biggest talking point, is the complete non-spectacle between Man City and Sheffield United. And I don't just mean from a competitive standpoint, but I think the biggest takeaway from that game, given the way it went, but more importantly, I think the attendance that occurred with two northern clubs playing at Wembley. You've got a Championship club and obviously a club at the top of the Premier League, heavy favourites, and you know you're getting around 70,000 in the stadium out of a capacity of 90,000. And I think this kind of leads into the wider discussion of, and I think it's a long-standing one, about FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley. Just to throw my 2 cents in there, because I've been to three, and all very enjoyable days, kind of of their own accord. Like, I really enjoy going to each and every one of them. But that's easy for me to say as someone that lives, 80 to 90 minutes from Wembley. It's a very easy day out for me. You know, the weather's usually pretty good this time of year, although it's not been great this year in particular. But it's usually a good day out. But I think when you get into a situation where it's two northern clubs especially, I think there's probably a discussion to be had about whether it's firstly sensible and secondly actually necessary. As I said, I mean, you've got 70,000 seats out of 90,000 being taken up. There were tickets going the night before and on the morning of the game. I think it's at points impractical, and actually I don't think it leads to a very good spectacle. I think a game like that, whether you go back to, and this is a bit before my time, but whether it's a Villa Park, whether it's an Old Trafford, somewhere neutral, whether it's Millennium Stadium, which obviously I think, or the Principality, whatever it's called now, used to host the FA Cup final while Wembley's being renovated. I think there's just a discussion to be had, because Wembley, for whatever reason, it's a prestigious ground, and I think should be reserved for finals only, and that's a belief I have, despite having good experiences at FA Cup semi-finals. But I don't know what you guys would add to that.
Yeah, I mean, being from the north, I mean, it's also just a matter of making football as financially viable as possible for fans, especially considering club season ticket prices going up and up. The FA Cup should be sort of break from that as much as possible. To make transport as easy as possible, especially if it's two northern teams. I don't see a problem at a place like Old Trafford, Etihad, Newcastle, St James's. There's no reason for it not to be at Wembley in terms of the semi-final for me. But it's just what happens if there's a Newcastle Arsenal the likelihood is you probably would get 45,000 Geordies coming down, but
meet him in the middle.
But then is that difficult for both fans? You know, so logistically, you know, I don't know. Certainly, one thing I wouldn't want is a two-legged semi-final. I don't know. That's not needed.
No.
Carabao Cup, you know, Carabao Cup.
Enough.
Yeah, exactly. Two-legged.
Bad enough for the Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
That is true. Actually, you make a good point. It could be worse.
Yeah.
I mean, the Carabao Cup is just it's an absolute disaster, that two-legged affair. But Ali, anything to add to that?
I am from the United States and I've never been to England, Harry. So I don't have much to add. I will say, I do think that it clearly is a move because Wembley's the biggest stadium in England, right? Soccer-specific stadium in that sense. So it's clearly a move to sell as many tickets as possible. But what they've learned today is that it doesn't sell beyond 70,000, and you have like if that semifinal was hosted at Old Trafford, or let's say I wrote a tweet about this. Ideally, you want the middle point between the two clubs in a stadium that is of a certain minimum capacity that is capable of hosting a semifinal like this. Let's say set a minimum of 50,000. Find the stadium equidistant from both teams that is at that capacity or fits certain criteria, like a UEFA Champions League final host needs to meet certain criteria, right? And play it there. But obviously, if the FA want to possible, would they rather sell 70,000 out of a 90,000 capacity stadium or sell out a 15,000 capacity stadium? I think you know the answer to that. So.
Yeah, there's one thing that on the back of that I've just thought of as well is, I suppose, in terms of logistics and planning, England, we're pretty good, especially the FA and the Premier League. But you know, you look at the Euros and you've looked at some, you know, Champions, other events. Would you want a situation where, you've suddenly got to decide where this stadium is, you know, a few weeks?
I don't actually know how they used to do it. Like when it used to be at Old Trafford or Villa Park, I don't actually know how they would decide which, because obviously the whole point of that in practice was that it was supposed to be a neutral ground. So presumably you'd have to wait to see who actually made it to the semi-finals and then obviously go from there. But I think logistically it's not the easiest thing to do, but I just don't think it's a good look when you get what happened on Saturday, where I think a one-sided affair where one team is a heavy favourite contributes towards it, of course.
Yeah.
But it just felt like a complete damp squib of a semi-final, which ultimately, from a neutral point of view, is probably not what you want to see. Man City won't give a shit. They're through to the final. They're on for the treble, and you know, onwards and upwards for them.
Yeah.
But that was sort of my takeaway from that. And then I suppose the other thing we probably should acknowledge is Man United getting to another final. I don't know where you guys come down on this in terms of like credit. Do they deserve credit for getting to two finals, given the draws they've had, given who they've had to beat? It was a penalty shootout. I actually don't think they played particularly well in the game, if I'm honest. But I think it was clearly off the back of the Sevilla game. It was, you got to defend first, because obviously they conceded 3 to a team that are probably worse than Brighton. So, you know, they played the game that was in front of them and got the result that they needed. And ultimately, they're the ones that now, as I said at the start, will have a say in whether Man City are able to, well, potentially replicate their heroics of 1999. But I don't know where you guys come down on this.
I would give them credit for getting a better result than the one against Sevilla, who are a relegation threat until very recently, against a Brighton team that are very, very good. And I also think Aaron Wan-Bissaka has to take a lot of credit for that. Because Carabao really didn't get past him once, which is extremely rare. So, I suppose in a penalty shootout, Val Vinker was kissing the ball. I don't know.
Yeah, I knew it was fucked. It was fucked. He's cussed. He's cussed. I don't know if you saw the clip of him as well. Like after they scored the winning penalty, and he just literally turns around, and obviously the penalties were at the Brighton end, and he just runs to the United end and just slides on his knees. It's like, it's almost, he so wants to be loved and appreciated. I'm just looking at like, you are not that guy. You're not that guy whatsoever. But you know, God loves a trier. And look, they're gonna have to try in that final, because make no mistake about it, Derby or not, they are heavy underdogs for that game, and I think they know it. I think they need probably their best performance of the season to have a chance. I know they beat Man City already, but you know, there were circumstances in that game, if we're being honest, that went their way with the Fernandes goal, and how that then led to the second goal. I think it's going to be tough for them, but you know, I don't like giving them credit. I think everyone knows sort of how I feel about them, but you can't really argue with getting to 2 finals in his first season. As much as I think they've been flawed at certain parts, they've had some very, very bad results. It's well documented, but you know, if they win the double, then that's a good season. There's no doubt about it. They look like a good shot for top 4 now. I think they've probably wrapped that up, and you know, you got to give them credit for that.
I would say one thing. Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0.
There you go.
Never to be done.
There you go. And that's one of a few, you know. So just, if they get a bit too loud, just got to remind them of that. Speaking of absolute shellackings dished out in the north of England. I mean, technically it was the north east.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, well, listen, mate, I could only wait so long. Newcastle 6, Tottenham 1. Yeah. I have to be honest, like, when the Tottenham team came out an hour before the game, and it was 4 at the back, and it's essentially a winger on a one fullback position and a wing back, if you're being generous, and then Eric Dyer in a back 4. I thought, I mean, this is the sort of team that like a 14-year-old Tottenham fan would put together and say, we'll play this.
On FIFA.
I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
It really was. Of all the games, I think, and not to get into the tactics of it too much, because I think this just was obviously a Tottenham team that's quit on the manager, who's obviously since been let go after 4 games in charge, which is pretty impressive and speaks to just what a shambles they are at the moment. But of all games to open it up and be a bit more expansive, I probably wouldn't have picked Newcastle away, if I'm honest. And I mean, they tore them to absolute ribbons. They really gave them a good seeing to. And I have to say, I think Newcastle deserve a lot of credit, given what was riding on the game for them. They're obviously aware that they're going for Champions League. If they lose to Tottenham, you know, as poor as Tottenham have been all season, it does open the door. And they absolutely hammered them. I mean, 6-1 is nothing to be sniffed at. I can't remember the last time Arsenal beat anyone 6-1, let alone a top 6, top 7 rival. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's easy to come down on the side of Tottenham being awful, which they were. They were really bad, and I'm just going to make that clear. They were really bad, as I keep saying, like, and I'm enjoying saying it. But Newcastle deserve credit for their role in it, and there's something special going on up there. Whatever you think of the regime, whatever you think of, you know, the way that they've been able to get to the position they're in, and let's be frank, it's not even a splash in the ocean yet. I mean, there's a lot more to come. But in terms of, you know, the team they've got and the job the manager himself is doing, I think it's something you can't argue with. They are well ahead of schedule, and it's a frightening prospect, if I'm honest, looking at it sort of for seasons to come.
Yeah, if they're doing this with the likes of Murphy and no offence to Almiron, but you know, Willock as well. These are good players.
Longstaff.
Yeah, Longstaff. These are good players, but they're not top 4. They're not even top 6 players really in any of the squad. So a lot of credit to Eddie Howe, who, you know, he's one of the few managers, English managers, that has really earned his way in terms of, you know, management. You know, bringing them up from League 2 all the way to the Premier League effectively is with Bournemouth, is pretty impressive. In fact, I think very few would have that record. Obviously, he left for a little bit and then came back. But
yeah, that's what I was sort of going to mention. Is I think he's an example of a manager that you're right. He did a great job at Bournemouth. I think he reached the glass ceiling there. You know, and it's understandable. I think in football management now, you very rarely see managers stay for kind of as long as he did at Bournemouth. I think there comes a point where players need a fresh voice. But I think what he recognised there was, as well as he did, there were flaws in his game. You know, you always think of those Bournemouth teams; they were very open and expansive, and it served them well for, you know, half a decade. But eventually, when they did go down, it was because they couldn't defend, they couldn't keep clean sheets. They were too easy to play against. And I think what you've seen, obviously, it's well documented that he went over to Spain, studied, you know, patterns of Atletico Madrid and Diego Simeone. And it's not just that. You've seen a manager that's taken the appropriate time out of the game, not just gone straight into the first job that's come up. And you see, you know, there's a lot of managers, I think, that just get lost in the washing machine at the moment, where you get chewed up, you get spat out, and then you're in this negative spiral, and it doesn't take long before you've played yourself out of any good jobs for the foreseeable future. And actually, sometimes your stock goes up as a manager by just taking a step away, because then I think people are able to look at what you produced, you know, in its entirety in a job like he had, rather than if you go quickly into another job and that starts to go wrong. It's very easy to sort of, you know, essentially put the numbers together and get the answer you want out of, you know, a sort of preconceived judgment about a manager. And I think what he's done is taken the appropriate time out, furthered himself, and Newcastle are reaping the rewards for it, and he's doing a very, very good job. I think he's a very, very strong candidate for manager of the season. I think, especially, you know, the way the league is going at the moment, and come on to that in a bit. I don't see many other alternatives to him, if I'm honest. And
I would give it to Mikel Arteta or him. Like, it's a real 50-50.
I think so.
But that said, I've clearly held an opinion that has been now getting
it's well documented.
It is very well documented what I thought of Newcastle. Wrong I was. I think they have top four wrapped up now. And I think a couple of really impressive wins. I had my moment in the sun when they lost to Aston Villa 3-0 last weekend.
Short-lived moment in the sun.
Really
Never in England, really. It didn't last very long.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, that was a weird game from them. It's one of those where it's like nothing goes right and you get a weird result, but which you can argue this is the case for Tom. In this 6-1 game, it's a really big result, like the 7-0 Man United Liverpool.
It is.
Like 4-0 United record. Like, we've had loads of weird results, but this result is the most deserved.
I think
out of all of them.
100%.
That is a terrible, like, identification of the strengths of Newcastle and the strengths of your team.
Yeah.
And the roles that each can do. Playing Pedro Porro and Perisic, and that's been like really widely covered. But I just wanted to put it out there that first decision in any match.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's not just the decision. It's not just the setup. The actual execution and the way they acquitted themselves. Yeah. It for me is up there with the worst opening 20 minutes, and not just the scoreline. The worst opening 20 minutes I've ever seen from a football team ever. And that is really saying something, because I've seen Arsenal get some shellackings in our time. You know, we were 4-0 down at Anfield after 20 minutes. I think we were 3 or 4-0 down. Like, we've had our own troubles. But honestly, and I know a 5-0 at that point involved Newcastle pretty much scoring every chance they got. But the way Tottenham were defending and the way they applied themselves, they were asking for trouble. And I actually think just generally their performance is kind of a wider reflection of just the turmoil that the club's in at the moment. It really is just a mess from top to bottom, where they've been in this cycle for the last 2, 3, 4 years, where since they got rid of Pochettino, it's we need to act like a big club, and that comes from appointing a big name manager, whether it be Mourinho, whether it be Conte, and it worked for a bit with Conte, but ultimately you never got the impression under him that A, he wanted to be there, and B, that there was any kind of sustainable long-term trajectory to what they were doing. It was very much, this is what we've built, this is how we win now, and they were, you know, average at best at that. And I think actually what you've seen with the way they play now, the personnel was wrong for a back four, but I don't think there's any back four they could have put out. These players have for so long been protected and blanketed by playing in a defensive back three system, because it goes back longer than Conte. They were doing it under Mourinho as well, and I think what you see with them now is a team that doesn't have a real identity to the way they want to win football matches. It's kind of very much reacting to what the opposition do. It's essentially a game plan born out of fear.
Yeah.
And I've seen it because we had it when we had Emery as our manager. It was very similar in terms of it was obsessive with what the opposition were doing and how we would stop them. And there comes a point where fans don't want to see that. It's okay when you're winning. And I think even earlier this season when Tottenham were getting results, their fans were the first to tell you that, like, we're not playing well. That the second we start losing a few games, it's going to go wrong fast for the manager. And you look at it, it didn't take long. It took probably 2 or 3 months of really poor performances, and the results got worse. And I think it was inevitable. And I have to say, just quickly, obviously they've sacked the interim after 4 games. What a ridiculous decision to leave him in post after getting rid of Conte. This is not a situation like you've sacked Conte and you've left Ryan Mason in charge, who is ostensibly his own man. He's not Conte's right-hand man. This is leaving Conte's right-hand man in charge.
It's crazy.
It's essentially Conte light. It's the same voice. It's the same ideas, in principle, until he opened it up on Sunday. And I don't see any positive to doing that. And neither did Spurs fans at the time. All of them were sort of looking at it and raising an eyebrow and thinking, there's no way that this ends well. And the second it goes wrong, it's going to go wrong fast. And it has 4 games.
For me, I understand why they sacked Conte, but it looks like an absolutely terrible decision, as it did when they sacked Jose in terms of the timing. You're heading into a top 4 race. Conte's been there and done that in a league position. Yes, it's toxic. Yes, it's horrible. But if you don't have a replacement, similar to what happened last year with Ryan Mason coming in for a Carabao Cup final, your first chance to win silverware in years. I just don't see the logic in not bringing in, in sacking your manager who's been there and done that, even despite the toxic environment, and they had it with Jose Mourinho. You would have thought they'd learned their lesson a little bit in terms of doing better planning.
It's interesting, like with Conte, because you're right, like there wasn't a plan in place, and sort of on the one hand you could look at it and go, well, clearly they weren't expecting his comments after Southampton, and clearly they didn't expect him to explode the way he did. But then he was never that far away. He was never that far away from doing something like that. If you think of him and think of the way he was always, even when they did well at the end of last season, you remember his comments after the Burnley game where he was sort of saying, well, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I have to go. Obviously then they actually reacted well, went on a good run and got in the top 4. But you always got the impression of him, he was a ticking time bomb. He was never far away from flying off the handle. And you would think that at least a sensible practice in their situation would be, you've got to have alternatives in the back of your mind that if something goes wrong, and let's be honest, their results have been poor for quite a long time. They'd gone out the Champions League, limply. They'd gone out the FA Cup to Sheffield United. I think they had 1 or 2 wins in the league under him in 5. I think they'd won like 3 league games without him there, and then he came back and they lost 2 and went out the Champions League. I'm staggered, really, at the time. And then, as you say, they've not learnt from the Mourinho situation. And Ryan Mason, again, for the second time in 3 seasons, it was the back end of the previous season, before last, he's going to end the season as an interim with the club in absolute turmoil. It's actually not a fair situation for him to find himself in. And as you said, they had a good chance to get top 4. It was an uphill battle. They would have needed to have a good end to the season. But if you look at it, Newcastle and Man United weren't sure things for it. And I think they've just handed it to them both, really. And both deserve credit for capitalising, and Newcastle were great. But Tottenham, it really feels like they gave up the chase at that point. They didn't feel like there was any chance they were going to get top 4. It felt like they were more likely to finish 7th or 8th, which to me now looks the case. I think they're really going to struggle to get into those European positions.
He gave me hope, Harry.
They gave you hope.
Yeah, Liverpool might finish in the top 4 now.
Wow, if it was up to Tottenham, they might, but they're giving your rivals, 6-1 wins, mate. You could have done with Tottenham getting something, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, no, because, Newcastle have locked in 3rd, so it's now,
Man United.
Tottenham dropping out, and then we have Man United, they need to drop a few more points.
Well, they play each other on Thursday.
Oh, yeah, I'll be rooting for Tottenham then, because
I mean,
know.
you should have a nice, easy win next Sunday, Ali, because you've got Tottenham.
Well, there you go.
Feels like a little bit too little, too late for Liverpool. Which I mean, you've been saying it for a while, but I suppose the other thing, with Tottenham, and this kind of brings us on a bit to sort of something I wanted to talk about briefly, is the Pochettino situation. Because to me, and this is
it must absolutely stink out of fans that Pochettino's going to Chelsea.
I think, honestly, with what happened, getting rid of Conte, to me, and this is the thing, we don't know how it ended with Pochettino, because there might be a lot of water under the bridge we're not aware of between him, between Daniel Levy, between some of the players there. We just don't know, even though the squad's changed a little bit. But for mine, and certainly the fans wanted it, if you wanted a quick solution, at least in the interim to getting towards top four, and let's face it, he's not a Mourinho or a Conte where he'll come in and just focus on the short term. For me, if you wanted an immediate pick-me-up for the fans and even the players, get them on side, I mean, it was right there in front of you. It was the lowest hanging fruit. And it felt like all the noises he's ever made about Spurs since, obviously, he got fired there, is about wanting to go back, about loving the club, loving the fans. And however it ended, that's the impression he's given everyone. And yet, it never felt like at any point they were exploring the option. And now we find ourselves in this situation where it looks like he's on the verge of becoming Chelsea manager. I don't know how immediate that is, whether it would start in the summer, whether it would start now. I'm not as up to speed with things as potentially you are, George. But I suppose sort of my question with that is, firstly, we've not really spoken since the Champions League exit, and that kind of marked the end of the season for Chelsea, if we're honest. I know there's half a dozen games left to play in the league or so, but really it's all about the summer and about next season. What are your thoughts on Pochettino, and what are your thoughts? Is there anything you can salvage from this season, kind of looking forwards?
The only thing we can salvage is getting Mason Mount on a contract. That's probably the only thing. I mean, not getting relegated is still on the cards. So,
have you got 40 points yet? I actually
don't. No, we've not got 40 yet. So hitting that 40 points as Ranieri said during Leicester's title,
you need another point.
Just get the 40 point. We'll be happy. But no, there's nothing to salvage from this point. I guess playing expansive football, basically treating every match as an exhibition match, trying out friendlies effectively in a competitive environment. That's what matters now. So bringing in Poch straight away would be ideal, because then he gets an extended period with the squad. He gets time to test out players in terms of who he trusts in the system. My thoughts on him, as I think I said, in terms of when Potter did get sacked, I'd love to bring Poch in. I'd absolutely love him at the club.
Does it not bother you, the Tottenham kind of?
I think it's brilliant. I think it spurs it on. Pardon the pun. But
it's brilliant. Well done.
If we can win anything with Poch, whether it be Carabao Cup, an FA Cup, I don't care. As long as it's not an Audi Cup. If we can win anything with Poch in charge,
who's been their best manager the last 50 years.
Exactly, and within 2 years, Chelsea win a title or win something. I mean, it'd just be perfect. It'd be absolute. It'd be brilliant. It'd be everything I've ever dreamed of. So no, it doesn't bother me, and perhaps it's about time in terms of ex-managers not going from Chelsea to Tottenham to ruin their careers. Come to Chelsea, hopefully, the opposite. And we can prove that we're the bigger club once again. And he brings a style of play, like in terms of obviously moving away from the Spurs links. He brings a style of play, he brings an identity. He brought up a lot of young English players at Tottenham. I think he can do that with a few of the English guys at Chelsea, and Kyle Walker became pretty sensational. Danny Rose even looked good. Trippier. So
Danny Rose. Right. You see him on the coverage yesterday. He looked like Sean Cole.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a positive appointment. I really do. We'll wait to see when he comes in. If he comes in, looks like it'll be likely. But I like him as a person as well. I think he's a really consummate professional. So I think hopefully that'll work. I hope they give him the freedom to sell a couple of players in the summer, though.
Well, you'll need to, by the sounds of all the noises coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I
it might be Mason Mount, though.
It looks likely. I'd be gutted, but it looks likely.
Ali, any thoughts on Pochettino to Chelsea? Where do you see this leaving them going forwards?
In a better place than this season, I feel like.
You don't
I think
so.
if they bring him,
I don't.
You do not. Okay, interesting.
No, I hope.
Tell me why.
Oh, I mean, I don't like Chelsea doing very well. No offense, George and Virgil and any other Chelsea fans out there, but I've long since suffered at the expense of them and them being better than us. So yeah, but oh, of course, mate. I mean, tribalism comes for anything in this industry. You got to understand, like, no rational analysis here. But yeah, so I cut you off there.
No, it's fine. It's definitely you would think in a better place because, especially if they bring him now. George makes a really good point about treating the next games as kind of a test release too. Who he'll trust going forward, who's going to be their starters, and yeah, plan the summer accordingly because this summer needs a lot of work to undo the worst transfer window of all time in the winter, as we all know. A big £600 million mistake needs to be corrected, and it will take a lot of work to be corrected, of course. So yeah, it would be a good chance for them to do so. I will say though that the Chelsea squad itself, apart from the lack of a forward, I think it lends itself pretty well to a Pochettino team. Yeah, and next season, with provided some stability and some sense of rational thinking in the transfer market, which was completely non-existent in the winter, it will be better than 10th place this season. Let's say that cautiously and see what happens. Well, I say cautiously. I don't really care what they do. You know what I mean?
I mean, I just hope they wait long enough because we've got to play them soon. I really want Lampard in charge. We didn't get to play Everton with Lampard, so it's only fair that we get to play Chelsea with Lampard there, in my opinion. It's only right. It's only fair, it's only just.
That's what
I absolutely agree.
It'll be Potter's first game and they'll probably find a way to scam a result against us and it'll be... I'll be sick to my stomach, in truth. But I like this idea of treating them all like friendlies. I'm on board with that. Please, do that. Rolling subs, water breaks. Just have it all. Like, I'm all for it. Just as long as the attitude of the players is. Let's replicate that friendly from July. I quite enjoyed that one. We'll run that one back and
play the kids.
Oh yeah, the one in Orlando. Yeah,
that'll be lovely, Ali. I enjoyed that. It was 4-0. I really enjoyed that. It was 2 in the morning. I was watching that one. It was worth staying up for. But I think the best bit about it, no doubt, is where it leaves Spurs because they are in such a bad. And it's difficult to think also like with the timing of Chelsea getting rid of Potter. It was difficult to think they weren't going to be shopping in the same markets for managers. In truth, it felt like the timing was definitely linked with how quick they were to pull the trigger on Potter. It was one game after the international break, he lost. And I think Chelsea thought, we've got to get someone in now. Because it's all timing with managers. Like, we've spoken about this before. Like, ultimately, when you sack a manager dictates, obviously, who you can bring in. And, you can obviously miss the boat sometimes for bringing managers in. And I think Chelsea obviously were keen for that not to happen, especially at the expense of Spurs. And I think it no doubt leaves them in a better position than it does Tottenham, who... It just feels like they're in the same situation as 2 seasons ago, and then that then preceded what was just a ridiculous, almost farcical hunt for the new manager, which happened that summer. I think they were close to appointing the Roma manager Fonseca. There was the Conte stuff where he pulled out. Then they gave it to Nuno. They sacked him after 10 games. It was just absolutely calamitous, and I would love nothing more than to see that replicated this summer because that's what they're headed towards. Because it doesn't feel like now, assuming Nagelsmann turns them down, which, if he wasn't interested in Chelsea, I don't see much more appeal at Spurs, if any. That shiny new stadium only gets you so far, lads. It's only good for so much. And, I don't think it leaves them in a great position, in truth. And, well, I'm going to enjoy it while it's here, because I remember this time last year when we suffered at their expense. And I'm not bitter at all. I've moved on to bigger and better things, like the title race. And that's what I want to bring this on to now.
Are you guaranteed to finish above them, right?
Yeah, we've done that. We secured it with that draw on Friday, which, you know, I have to be honest, like, I saw that tweet going around after the game and I wasn't really much in a celebratory mood. It was kind of the last thing I was interested in. Had we won, I think we would have secured Champions League football as well, which, I mean, it's a formality at this point, but it would have been nice to get that secured, but that we still have to win another game. But obviously didn't win, didn't beat Southampton. I mean, I can't stand bloody Southampton. I can't wait for them to get relegated, because I actually saw, so Southampton this season have got 24 points, and a third of those have come from Arsenal and Chelsea. Obviously beating Chelsea twice, 2 draws against Arsenal. It's just... they have long since been a scourge of ours, not to excuse the result, which is just ridiculous. And now leaves us in this precarious position with Man City breathing down our necks. And, well, Man City don't really do, you know, win or bust Premier League games. They usually come out on top. I can't think of an occasion where they haven't, in truth. Even when they didn't at Anfield, they ended up winning the title anyway.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very tough, I think, for us. They found some form at the right point of the season. It's probably worth mentioning. You know, when you're making short work of a Champions League tie against Bayern Munich, you're doing something right. And I think we come into this not in good form. And it sounds weird because we haven't lost since we last played them. But, you know, 3 draws, twice from 2-0 up, conceding goals for fun. I think that's the biggest problem at the moment. It's how many goals we're conceding. Because we're scoring goals. Like, we've got 77 goals this season. It's not been a problem scoring. But since the World Cup in particular, because people want to attribute it to the Saliba injury, which is true to a point, that there's structural issues that do exist in our team without him there. And Rob Holding, you know, he wasn't good enough last season, let alone how we're trying to play now. So I'm here for it. But it would also be remiss of me, I think, not to recognise that since the World Cup, we've not been anywhere near as good defensively. Like, when I think of our best performances this season, I think of the way we've controlled certain games, whether it be the Chelsea game, whether it be the Brentford game. There was a game at Wolves. There was a few games before the World Cup where we just didn't give anything up. Obviously, we ended up winning the games by scoring goals as well, but it was just the control we played with. And that's not been there since the World Cup. Something's not been the same. I don't think it helps that we give cheap goals away. I think when I look at the goals, we do tend to concede. It's very, very easy for teams to score against us. I mean, it doesn't help when your goalkeeper kicks the ball to the Southampton player after literally 20 seconds and puts them 1-0 up. Obviously, you're fighting an uphill battle. But it's just not the sort of stuff you need when you're chasing your first title in, you know, the best part of 20 years. Everything needs to be calm, and it's the opposite of calm at the moment. And that's the biggest issue, because people will be keen to label it us bottling it, and that's always something I've pushed back on. I pushed back on it last season, and I pushed back on it this season because it's not a term I like, to be honest with you. I think that the term bottling it, to me, it kind of almost suggests some sort of like moral failure, and I don't think that's what we're seeing. I think what we are seeing is it's weighing heavily on them, and I think that's the difficult part. Is it means a lot to them. You know, we wouldn't have come back in that game on Friday if it didn't mean anything. I think it means too much, if anything. And I think that's the thing at the moment. They just need to harness it the right way. And if there's any comfort, I think, it's not the worst thing to go into that game as underdogs. I honestly think that, like, if we went there and we could play for a draw, could go for the win, I'm not sure it's a great mentality to actually go there with. Whereas now, it honestly feels like, to me, people have written us off, and I'm actually fine with that, because for long parts of the season, you're the team out front, you're the team to be chased, you're there to be got at, you're there to be hunted down, and ultimately there to be ridiculed. I don't mind going to Man City almost, and I hate the term free hit, so it's not what I'm going to brand it, but they're very good at home. Like, we could play well and lose that game in a lot of scenarios, and I'm actually fine with that. That won't be where we've lost the title. It will be getting 2 points off Southampton. You know, it will be losing to Everton, be dropping points to West Ham from 2-0 up. Like, there's 6 or 7 games you can point to before losing to Man City at the Etihad. They are very good at home. But what I do think is we had an opportunity, in my opinion, in the last couple of games to find a system for this Man City game, because I'm strongly of the belief we cannot go there with Rob Holding playing. I think it's just a disaster waiting to happen. I think we know that from last season. He does not play well in these big games. I think structurally our team doesn't push up as high with him playing. We can't play out with him playing. There's certain things we just cannot do with him in that position. So we needed to find a way for him not to play. But the problem is we didn't do that. We kept him in there, kept the same team, and we didn't even win the last two games. So it sort of feels like you've had the worst of both worlds, because you've not been able to experiment with a team, but you've also not got the results. And so it's a really tough one, I think, because do you change the system for one game, a one-off game? Presumably they hoped that Saliba was going to be fit. They've pretty much given it every opportunity to happen, and yet, you know, he isn't going to be there. So for me, and it's sort of like the example I thought of, George, was Chelsea when they beat Man City 3 times with that back three, and we beat them the year before with back three. And I was sort of thinking, well, do we go to a back three? Because, you know, but then Bayern did it in the Champions League and they lost 3-0. So it's not an easy one, I think, to sort of pontificate, because whatever way I look at it, it's imperfect solutions. It's not the 11 I want to be playing. And I think whatever way we do it, you're going to have someone playing in you know, an unideal position, or you can have Rob Holding playing, which I'm so keen to avoid. And so I don't know. I mean, you've seen Chelsea do the job over Man City in some big games. You know, if you were in our position, do you think you sort of go there with the approach that we need to score because we've been scoring goals, or is it you got to stop them scoring, because obviously you know you can't score 3 or 4 up there. You need to stop the goals going into some point. Chelsea have had success against them. Do you think that's the sort of the same tactics we can employ, or does Haaland being there change that?
I think Haaland does change it. You can't sit as deep as I remember sort of a Newcastle result, sitting deep and getting a result, but they usually fare quite badly in the last couple of years. And then Chelsea, I mean, in terms of the results, one of the big ones I think was a 3-1, where majority of our goals came from the counter attack.
Under Conte.
Under Conte, so Hazard, Willian, and Costa. Yeah, and all of them were effectively counter-attacks. And I think that is where you do see the most success when you're playing City, mainly because you're just not going to have as much of the ball. You know, statistically, you're not going to have a lot of the ball. Do you change your philosophy? I don't think you can at this stage of the season. I don't think
it's the difficult part. It feels like it's too late.
Even if you do, I don't think it's healthy for the games afterwards. You know, I don't think a lack of consistency is ever good in terms of pushing towards, you know, results on a long-term basis. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to not lose this game in terms of.
It's a hard attitude to go in with, like, of this mind, right, just don't lose, because then you sort of end up, you know, bunkering up to an extent where actually I think you've got to give City something to think about. Absolutely. If you just sit in for 90 minutes, they will score, like they always score. They're very difficult to keep a clean sheet against. So it's sort of why I'm of two minds. Like, obviously we need to stop conceding goals. Like, it really has been a problem, but I equally don't want us to go there and, you know, not think about scoring, because I think our best players are at the front end of the pitch, and it's ultimately how do you find that balance between staying in the game, not giving up anything cheap. You can't give them anything, really. No. That was our problem when we played them earlier this season. We actually, funny you mentioned the ball, having less of the ball. We had more of the ball. We had 65% possession, but the problem we had was we couldn't get the ball into the right areas. We were horseshoeing it around the back, and they were just waiting to pounce on us. And I almost wouldn't mind trying to do a similar sort of thing to them, where you've got a good shape, you're compact, but we can push onto them, press them, and steal it off them. Like, we've got the players to do that. It's just about being secure, about finding that balance. I'm interested to get your thoughts, Ali. Obviously, you've seen Liverpool, you know, play quite a few of these games against Man City with high stakes. How would you approach it?
I'd be as aggressive as possible, to be honest. The problem with Man City is that they are extremely adept. If you give them a chance on the ball, they will play they don't play through regardless of how well you defend. Regardless, and especially in current form. Remember the FA Cup game? They lost, I think, 0-8 in that game.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a template as to how you should play Man City, even though their squad was a bit rotated.
Man to man.
Yeah, pretty much go man to man. And because in that way, whoever has the ball is being pressed and has no time. I think that's the most important thing. The risk with that, though, is that you might get a lot of players out of position. So in that sense, like if anyone starts to get pulled and you find yourself with some holes at the back, let's say, I don't know, Saliba is marking Haaland.
Saliba's not going to be marking anyone, mate. He's in the stands.
I meant Gabriel. Gabriel marks Haaland. Hypothetically, Haaland's dropping. You only have Rob Holding at the back at this point. Any ball over the top, it's a problem. And in that game, I remember Rob Holding being the one on Haaland. And
he got taken off at half time because he was on a yellow. It was another Spurs game. Like, he was just waiting to get sent off.
Exactly. So I wouldn't do that again. But other than that, I think of all that. Ortega, I think, gave the ball away like 30 times in goal for City. Pass completion for City was generally atrocious that day.
We played them. It was actually a good performance. If I think back to that, it was a tight game. Like they played pretty much a full strength team, and we, bar the goalkeeper from what I remember, and we rotated 5 or 6 players, and it was 1-0, and it could have been 1-0 the other way. It was a very tight game. But my worry about going up there and doing the same thing is, I just know what Pep's like. Like, once he's seen something, he finds a way to just do something that you're not even thought of to react to it and change it and just. Yeah. It's the little intricacies. Now, you've got someone in Arteta who knows that, and this has been our kind of problem whenever we've played Man City under Arteta, is it essentially becomes a battle of, and a very one-sided one because they keep beating us, who can do something the other's not going to predict. Particularly with us, I remember him playing Willian as a false 9 the first time we played them away under him. It was like, why on earth would you do something like that? But every time we play them, there's sort of this element of trying, I think, to do something they're not going to expect. And so on this occasion, I'd be surprised if we went there with the same pressing scheme, not just because of the personnel that I've mentioned. Saliba not being there's a big thing. You can't go man to man with Rob Holding. No. I mean, we were lucky he got off at half time that night, because I think we could have lost the game by more if he'd stayed on. But even if we do, and even if we do it well, I think they're playing better than they were then. Is the obvious thing to mention. I think they're in a much better kind of rhythm than they were at that point. They were a little bit inconsistent at that point of the season.
That is right.
And I just think that Pep finds a way to react to stuff and change something and give you something else to think about. And that would be my concern with going there and trying to do the same thing, even though it worked. I think he said it. We're the only team that's done it to them all season. Gone there and played man to man, and we had moderate success doing it, but I think
generally,
go on.
The best games we have played against them were those games where we just extremely aggressive at pressing in every situation. We know they're gonna come back, so just do not give the chance for the ball to be distributed to anywhere in particular that is meaningful. Problem is with their current 3-2. Defensive shape, Stones being one of the two, and next to Rodri. If they find a problem with finding people to pass to, then Rob Holding might simply drop back to center back and Walker goes out to the right, which is his position as well. The current 3-2, the current 3-2-4-1 is a lot better. It's a lot more.
They found something. We're playing 4 centre backs.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a finalized, set version.
It's a proper 5-5.
It is, yeah.
Like, when people speak about that kind of formation in a team, obviously there's elements of fluidity to it, kind of with defenders and then attackers kind of floating between. But it really is for them just 5 defensive players, then 5 attacking players, and I think that's been the key to them playing better, is getting proper defenders in the team.
Yeah.
They're not as easy to transition on, counter-attack on as they were, and therefore they're able to sustain attacks. And when they sustain attacks, they're very difficult to stop. You know, they've got very good attacking players, and they've got match winners pretty much in every position. And I think that's going to be the difficult thing, because there's a balance between, obviously you've got to stop them at that end, but you've got to give them something to think about. If you just sit back, you're not getting a result. I've not seen a team do it to them. I've not seen a team sit behind the ball this season. Bar Spurs, but Spurs were 1-0 up. You know, they stole a goal and then did it. That's a little bit different to doing it at 0-0. I think if you do it at 0-0, they're bound to score, because they always do. And that's the difficulty we have, because we're not defending well. That's the reason I don't think we can get a result. It's not because I don't think we can give them something to think about, but it's just the defending is so bad. It's terrible. You can't keep clean sheets. We give goals away for fun. You know, we can't defend set pieces. Set piece has been just an absolute travesty since the World Cup. I don't know what's happened there. It's like we've been scouted like proper on those, because pretty much every set piece, they're like sitters. They're like the Southampton one. He's heading into an empty net, and it's not the first one I've seen all season. Like it's been a constant thing since January onwards. So it's tough, and it does feel like, to me, my attitude going into it is, obviously with the points differential, people will go, well, you need to win because they've got 2 games in hand. I'm content with a draw. When I look at their fixtures, and we've got some hard ones, don't get me wrong, but what you essentially have to do is you have to give them that moral dilemma with that Real Madrid tie. You've got the FA Cup final on the horizon. They need to think about prioritising. And I know that they've got the squad that they can rotate, but you've got to give them something to think about. What you don't want to happen is, by the time you get to that Real Madrid thing, they've gone a couple of points past you, and they've got those games in hand, and they're sort of on the beach with it already. And they're very good when they're relaxed like that. They just keep winning. They don't even think about it. You've got to give them something to think about. And if we draw with them, and it's 5 points, and they win every game for the rest of the season, and win the title by a point, then there's not a lot you can do about that. We would have lost 1 game from mid-February onwards. It was to them, and that would be it. Like, there's not a lot you can do in that situation. You know, they're potentially on for the treble. This is not the team you're talking about. I think where I would be disappointed is if we go there and we're gung-ho, thinking we have to win it because of the points difference of 5 with the 2 games in hand and the better goal difference. Like, you've got to go there with the attitude that a draw is okay. Don't go there to draw, but a draw is not a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. A draw is, in my mind, always a good result against Man City. Just as I thought it was a good result against Liverpool. Like, there's certain games you just look at and you go, you know what? On paper, a point is fine. And this is certainly one of them. If we don't win the title, it's not because we drew to Man City. And that's sort of, you know, where I come down on it, in truth. But it promises to be a heck of a game, because, you know, they know that if they win it, they've probably won the league. If they draw it, then you know they've got a bit to think about, in my mind.
They've got a lot to do.
They've still got to play. You know, 7. They've got 9 games in May. That's a lot of games. However big your squad is, you know, that is a lot of football matches every 3 days. With essentially, you've got to just keep winning. They probably couldn't afford a slip up if they were to draw, because at that point we'd have 5 games left. I know one of them's Newcastle, and I'm fucking dreading it, and I know one's Chelsea, but that gives you the shot in the arm I think that you need, getting a draw against Man City. It's one that I think gets us. It's a good draw. It's not a drawing against West Ham or Southampton or even Liverpool from 2-0 up. Like, in my mind, it would be a good point, and from there you could move. But it's going to be interesting. I'm absolutely bricking it, as I'm sure you could probably tell. But you know, good to break it down tactically. One thing before we go, boys, have you got a short King of the Week for me? Because I was thinking about this. I literally couldn't find anyone short that had scored, but I'm open to suggestions.
Have to score?
Well, you know, played well.
Ooh.
The only one I could think of, and I actually couldn't find his official height, was Daniel Levy. Kind of for similar reasons to when I nominated Todd Boehly last time. Just, you know, gave me some entertainment.
Slightly short fact. I didn't watch the Spurs documentary. I watched an episode of the Spurs documentary, and I thought it was just a little bit not for me. But
I mean, I commissioned that as well.
What Daniel Levy's height is. I have no idea, and I'm driving, and I can't open
You can't Google it. You're giving it away there, Ali. When you come up with these good short kings of the week, it's because you're sat there, you know, looking it up on the internet.
I can research it.
No creativity. No creativity. You disappoint.
What do you creativity?
With the use of the internet?
Where am I going to pull it out of? Apart from the internet, Harry.
I know. Well, listen. You've got an excuse. George is sat there. Has he got one?
Googling. I was thinking, how tall is Odegaard and Saka? Because
Saka's 5'11". I was surprised when I saw that. Like, I remember looking at it a few weeks ago. He's 5'11". He doesn't look 5'11".
No, then it must be. I tipped him last week, I think, or not last week because I wasn't on last week. A couple of weeks ago, Theo Walcott.
I know, a great shout. You know, I'm going to give it to Walcott actually. First, because he's a great goal, played really well. Didn't celebrate, and I love this, and like it was so obvious. He so didn't want to score another one. Like genuinely, he could have kept making that same run, another 5, 6. Like that is such classic Walcott, that into-out run, because he wasn't very good with the ball at his feet, but running onto it was like his bread and butter. Yeah. He could have kept doing that all night, but he kept running away to the corner. Like he's Arsenal through and through. Some people were booing him off, which like really irritated me actually, because I think he was a good player for us, and he always talks us up.
Well, I've just googled him, and one of the top things is Theo Walcott. Arsenal are way better than Manchester City.
Yeah, that's what he said after the game. I mean, look, you know, I don't know if I agree with him, but I like his intention. I don't think the results reflect that either, because I'm pretty sure they got a drubbing off Man City in the game he's talking about. But there you go, George. Great suggestion. Theo Walcott is short king of the week.
Southampton beat Man City 2-0 this season, so he's right.
Oh, in the League Cup.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. We did get 2 points against Man City, so we didn't lose them.
I do recognise that I cut off the major announcement there, but I had to point it out.
Oh, thank you.
So just announce the shocking of the week.
It's Theo Walcott. Of course. I mean, it was a great suggestion by George. You know, I have to say, Daniel Levy. You know, strong contender.
Just misses out.
Just misses out to Theo Walcott. I'm more than happy to give crown Theo Walcott over Daniel Levy, and he's done it. He's short king of the week. Congratulations! Stick that one on the mantelpiece, Theo lad, and well done. You've done it. Hopefully that point that he sort of gifted us there by not being as ruthless potentially as he could have been goes a long way to winning us the league. We'll find out. A lot to come this week. Big game Wednesday night. Hoping for the best, guys. Thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure as always.
Good luck.
Congratulations. I think we're going to need it, mate. I think we're going to need it. But we'll see how it goes. Hope you've all enjoyed listening, and we'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers.